This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. With me this week are two recently carved pumpkins with minds of their own, Nick White.
Hey.
And Kait Lamphere.
Hi.
Thank you both for joining me this week. I'm very excited to talk about comic books with you. This is episode 259. You know, we never say the episode number of our show in the show, and I don't know if people find that weird or if they find it calming. That way they don't have to worry about it, whether or not they're listening to the latest episode or not, despite us announcing the date when comic books come out. I'm always curious about that. So send us a message, on Instagram or Twitter at IRCB Podcast. Let us know what you think. But I'm here to ask the question that I ask every single week. How have you been? And how have comic books been? Let's start with you, Nick.
Things have been fine. Mostly. Comixology has somehow found a way to, they've managed to break through the signal intercepting abilities of my normally effective tinfoil hat. And they've been reading my mind for the proper sales recently. And
well, your months and weeks of complaining directly to me have finally paid off.
Yeah, and it's like anyone would be like, Nick, Occam's razor would suggest Comixology is not going to go through all these steps to figure out, what you want. But when you see me get out of control on Comixology, it maybe makes sense that they would try to figure that out. So recently, the sales have been really good, which of course is bad for me. Obviously, one of the things that I've been sort of trying to round out my collection on is more BPRD. So
right,
been getting more of that, and I've been rereading the first big omnibus of that again, even though it's like very end of world apocalyptic centric. And like I got about an hour into that last night and then said, I don't know tonally if this is what I want, but also like I'm halfway through this, so why stop now? So, beyond that, I've also been reading Rye. I read Rye 3 through 5. This is the series that technically began all the way back in 2019. Dan Abnett's writing it. Juan Jose Reap is drawing it. Andrew Dahlhaus is doing the colors. Dave Sharp is doing the letters. I know this isn't a hot take. It's probably a tepidly warm take at best. It's also one that I'm not so sure if I've gotten on this specific soapbox before. I think I've gotten on an adjacent soapbox, I guess. But Rye is basically the best book Valiant is putting out right now.
Sure.
You could say, like, how fierce is the competition, Nick? You might ask, and the answer is it's not. It's not fierce at all, but in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and Rye happens to be Valiant's resident Cyclops in that regard. The strength of this book really is that it's basically what if Elysium, for those who remember that movie, that was where you had Matt Damon and Charlotte Copley, who you also couldn't understand in this movie either. What if that crashed into Mad Max? Basically, you have this perfect society in space, and it comes tumbling down and smashes onto the surface of Earth, which at that point was basically a wasteland. And it more or less allows for anything to happen in any given issue, because you have this society from space which had like the most advanced technology and these crazy experiments and wild stuff going on. And you basically combine that with the resource wars and bandits and danger that comes with living in a post-apocalyptic society. And so, hey, do you want to have an issue where you have dinosaurs roaming the earth that are equal parts flesh and equal parts machine, but they're still 100% deadly? Sure, why not? That's going to happen. Do you want to deal with Rye being trapped in this smart house that was built thousands of years ago, but the AI inside has been, doing the upkeep and cleaning it and taking care of it for like thousands of years, but it's been driven mad by the fact that there's nobody in the house to look after? Yeah, sure, let's do an issue about that. It's crazy. Like, the core conceit of this book is so cleverly open-ended that almost anything is on the board. Like, anything is possible. I really, really love that. So it's basically Lone Wolf and Cub meets X-Files, and like the 20-second Valiant summary is this builds on 4001 AD, which is where Valiant went into the future. New Japan is formed. It goes into space. Basically, they get in a war with Earth. They destroy Earth. New Japan becomes this wonderfully technologically advanced utopia. Earth basically becomes a scorched wasteland. New Japan turns out to be corrupt. This thing running it named Father is this corrupt AI. His basically enforcer named Rai figures it out, destroys Father, and New Japan crashes into Earth, and that's 4001 AD. And that basically set the scene for this, with Fallen World also being done by Dan Abnett, preceding this new version of Rai.
Yeah.
I tried to encapsulate it as quickly as I could. But yeah, so now you've got Rai and this assistant of his called the Raijin. I won't get into that. That's a very complicated thing. And they're basically trying to stop Father, that AI, from New Japan, because Father has found a way to reconstitute a new body for himself. And now he's he basically backed himself up into 12 different places in New Japan that have now crashed into Earth. And if he can more or less recover all of his backups, he'll be unstoppable again. So it's basically Rai traveling across this wasteland. Each issue is a different adventure, encountering different things and different people, and it's just super wild. And like, I like that because it feels a lot like X-Files, where sure, there's like a big overarching plot, but it's largely episodic. And so one week you might deal with Bigfoot, and the next week you might deal with aliens, and the next week it's a sea monster. And I feel like episodic storytelling is so not in vogue anymore compared to serialized storytelling, which is like, these days, if you're not doing serialized storytelling, people are like, oh, what is that program even, right? So,
well, I mean, kind of, it depends. That's a whole other discussion.
No, let's open that up. Let's have that discussion. We'll do this podcast another time. Who cares? It's just interesting to see that type of storytelling going on, because I feel like it's not in vogue overall these days.
Right.
So,
well, especially when you're doing a capes book, like a superhero book.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a great book. It's so very much in the vein of old Valiant that I'm kind of surprised that Valiant's even letting it really happen. I think it's really just because it's kind of in its own sandbox as a universe 2,000 years in the future, that Valiant was kind of like, just let Dan Abnett do what he wants. Like, he can't affect or impact the sort of things we're, largely trying to do. So,
right.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I think Juan Jose Reap is always at home when it comes to telling like stories that get very violent at one point or another. And I think that's because I think he was on, oh boy, watch as I'm wrong. I think he was on Crossed at one point. And so
Jason Burrows, yeah. Or no, excuse me. Juan Jose Rip, I think, did some of that. Yeah. I don't know. I was a person that read that for a little while, but I think it was Jason Burrows who did, because I just got him and Jason Burrows mixed up in my head, because I was thinking, oh, isn't he on the 40K book that Kieran Gillen is doing? But no, that's Jason Burrows. So yeah, Juan Jose Rip did, like, he's done a bunch of different. He did No Hero and Black Summer over at Avatar with Warren Ellis. So it's like similar fucked up stuff.
Yeah, no, he did some Crossed stuff, apparently. I'm seeing it now. But anyway, yeah.
Either way,
he's very much at home doing violent stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, Kate, what about you? How have you been? What kind of comics you've been reading?
Well, I've been sitting on my couch or in front of my computer for the last 7 months, and yesterday I had to do some yard work, which involved using like muscles or what is left of my muscles. So now my entire body hurts.
Oh my god!
I don't know what those are. I expect a report later because I don't really understand.
Well, I don't
send me the Wikipedia link.
Yeah. But I have been reading some comics, and I recently read T-Dragon Festival number 1 and 2, but they are OGNs, not like single issue comics. So it is a series. And these books are maybe like 150 pages, I want to say. So when I say number 1 and number 2, it's the order in the series. Anyway,
Yeah.
These are by Katie O'Neill, and I don't know if like perfect is too strong of a word to use when analyzing comics. But if there are perfect books, these are it for me, at least. These have like LGBT characters. There are dragons in them, and there's tea. So this is my wheelhouse completely. These books are definitely for kids.
Okay.
But you know what?
There's nothing wrong with reading a book that is just happy and warm and makes you feel good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So in summary, the dragons are basically like cats. Like they all have their own like subspecies and personalities, and the dragons like grow the tea on their bodies, which sounds really strange, but like it's like cats have whiskers. Like instead of whiskers, they grow like tea, and the humans like they're very like needy, like pets basically. So the people around them, I said humans, but they're not all humans. There are like non-human like speaking characters in these books. Which hasn't really been addressed yet, but like basically you take care of these creatures and eventually they flower, and then you can pick the flowers, and the flowers are their tea. And like they don't talk about like the economy of this dragon tea, but it's got to be super rare because it's implied that there are only like a couple of tea dragons left in the world. And considering the amount of care that they require, I have to imagine that this tea is like, I don't know, extremely expensive. It would make these very small, like in the middle of nowhere villages extremely rich if they were to sell a bag of it, but instead they just like make one pot of tea and like share it with the whole town. Anyway, so the art, like I said, it's very cute. It's very quaint. There is a subplot in volume 1 about the girl who is just finding out about these tea dragons and getting really into these tea dragons. She's also studying to be basically a blacksmith like her mom. And she's trying to decide if she wants to continue this like family tradition that's like this art is dying, similar to how there aren't many tea dragons left. So there is like a parallel in that. But this whole book, I'm thinking like this girl is clearly like kind of in love with this like tea dragon thing, but then she's also studying to be a blacksmith. And it's like, okay, which rare dying art is she supposed to choose at the end of this, or does she have to choose? Like, but this blacksmith subplot kind of felt like it was like smushed into the story. It's only mentioned 2 or 3 times, but I think that it ended nicely. It just felt kind of forced.
Gotcha.
And I just want to mention that Tea Dragon Festival and Tea Dragon Society aren't in chronological order, like in the world building, because there are characters who are like kind of elderly in book 1 that are like in book 2. It is part of their like adventures as they were, young adults or whatever. So that's kind of strange reading it, like because it's not building on the first story, I guess, but I mean, I would still read them in release order because of the way that the world building is set up. Like Tea Dragon Society, which is number 2, isn't really like written as a filling in the world building for you, like the first book does, if that makes sense.
Yeah. This all sounds to me like that tabletop game Ryutama. And that now all I want to do is play a game where a series of adventurers are just trying to find tea dragons and collect their tea leaves, but in like a nice way, and like be friends with the dragons, because that's like a part of the game. I just want to drop all my D&D games. I just want to play Ryutama. Thanks, Kate.
I don't think I've heard of this game.
I think you would really dig on the idea of it. It's very crunchy for a game that is very much about like friendship and surviving and traveling and the friends we made along the way. It is very, very crunchy mechanics. It's insane. I really want to play it though. I've only played a couple like 1 or 2 one-shots, and ugh. Anyways, that's a whole other podcast. We'll get into that maybe in the break. But for me, I've been reading a handful of things. I did read Dracula Motherfucker. I have a lot of thoughts on it that I just won't bring up. I'm just going to say that. And then, despite the takes, I don't have anything really super positive or negative to say about it. I'm just very mad about some things, namely that it was $15 for a digital collection of 70 pages, and I'm like, I have some frustrations about that.
Delivering the hot take about how he's not going to give us the hot take. I love it.
Well, listen, it's not productive. If you want to hear me complain, I'll jump on Discord and just yell into a microphone for a half hour.
Okay.
But what I do want to talk about is a book that I did read called Ron in the Grey World, Volume 1. This is by Aki Iri. It's a super whimsical book about this younger girl who's like 10 or 11 who just wants to be grown up. And she has these magical shoes that allow her to become an older version of herself. So she puts the shoes on and she becomes like a 17 or 18-year-old girl. And the reason why, like, I actually read this and I didn't really like it, but the story goes on as Ron is just getting into these weird circumstances where she puts the shoes on and something crazy happens because they're magical, and we find out that like her brother has this coat that turns him into a wolf, and her dad can turn into a crow. And it turns out her mom is like this super powerful mega sorceress who sits on a door that blocks all of the evil from another dimension from entering our dimension. But every once in a while, she wants to go see her family, or she wants to go take a bath, and so she's not constantly sitting on this door. And there's more to the story than that, but it's a really interesting book because it's beautiful. Like, the art is so incredibly beautiful. I was really floored by it, and like I said, I read through it and I was like, yeah, I don't know if the rest of this is for me. And then I was talking to some people about it because I'm in another book club for like some folks that work at Amazon, and they were like, yeah, you read this story, and when you actually take a step back and look at it, you realize that Ron's whole thing is that she wants to be grown up. She wants to be like her brother. She wants to be like her dad. She wants to be like her mom and actually be a magic user who can like be part of this circle of people, but she's too young. She's constantly told she's too young to be performing magic, too young to be doing this, too young to be doing that. She just wants to be grown up. And so after some discussion, I was like, okay, it's only 7 volumes. After One Piece, anything is possible. So why don't I just read the rest of this series? And apparently the story gets more direct and focused in its storytelling, because the first volume is kind of just like a series of one-shot stories, and by the end of the volume you realize that they're starting to build on something bigger, but that's the end of the volume. But yeah, this book is gorgeous, and I think that if you like stuff like Witch Hat, you'll probably like this, which is why I'm surprised that I didn't like this at first, but after some people describing it to me, it's like, okay, maybe I'll like the rest of it. And it's only 7 volumes. There is some creep factor because, like, apparently I don't read a lot of josei manga, but josei manga has this trope of like an asshole or creepy kind of intimidating male interest of the main character who will always kind of be a little bit weird and gross, and then it turns out that they're lovable or there's something wrong with them and that's why they deserve sympathy or something. And I'm like, holy shit, that's kind of weird. But all the people who I talked to were like, no, that's just a normal thing. And I was like, that's really weird. It's not okay, but it's really weird. And there's a guy who's in this story who kind of gets a little bit too like close to Ron. It's like she's like 11 years old, but she looks like she's 18, and like so like she has the kind of like, I don't want to say like she has like the mental faculties of like 11-year-old who just wants to like have fun and play with people, versus this guy who's like, hey, why don't you let me put my hand on your thigh? And she's like, no, I'm gonna leave, and then she flies away because she's magical. So it's a little odd in that sense. But anyways, that book was fun, it's interesting, and I'm probably going to keep reading it, even though I wasn't a huge fan of it at first, just to see where the story goes, because it's only 7 volumes. And yeah, the only other thing I'll talk about really quick is I want to give my One Piece update. So Xander, go ahead and roll the clip.
I know what you're up to. Yeah, you want to be the king, huh?
For this week, I am on chapter 961. I just got caught up to 960, taking my time, trying to get to 999 when the series comes out at 999. So I feel like I have some time. I'm going to be sitting on like 998 probably for a very long time once I eventually get caught up, because this book is slow going. But I did see someone posted in our Discord that Oda said that he was going to be really diligent about getting the rest of the chapters out for this book, because he has no excuse or something. So hopefully we'll see more One Piece. But anyways, moving on, let's talk about comic books that are coming out. Comic books are dropping on October 28th, 2020. I think I have that date right. What are you guys excited for this week? Let's start with you, Kait.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 9 by Nagabi. We've talked about this a lot pretty recently, but I just wanted to say Volume 9 is coming out. Yes. And I have Volume 7 out from the library right now, so I'm a little bit behind, but I'm really glad that this just keeps coming. I tried to look up how many volumes there are going to be, if there was any kind of plan for like a stopping point or anything. When I first found this series, I thought that it was only like 4 volumes, which is one of the reasons that I grabbed it, because I was like, this is like not really a commitment, but I'm really glad that it just keeps going. So so when I was researching this, I found that there was like some mention of an anime adaptation online, and I tried to like dig into that and see if it was going to be longer at all or anything. But all I could find was like this news report of a 10-minute short that was released with Volume 8 in Japan, and I couldn't find the whole short, but I did find like a trailer for it and like a small clip, and they're really beautiful. It's like this really unique animation style. It's got a low frame rate, but the art is very true to the books. Like, and it's in color, but the colors are like really muted. There's a couple of pages at the beginning of Volume 1 that are in color just to like set the tone, and the colors really match that really well from what I can recall. So if you have a moment, though, the links for those are in our show notes, or I'm sure that you could just Google them. But they were really beautiful. They're less than a minute. Anyway, I also am kind of looking forward to an adaptation of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. The adaptation is by M. Chandler. This is coming out from Manga Classics, which is like a whole thing, and I didn't realize that. I love adaptations into graphic novels or manga, and this is like a whole, I don't know if it's a whole company or if it's like all that this one creator does or something, but there's probably like 15 like classic literature pieces that have been adapted by this company into manga, and I'm so excited about it. There's so much of it, and I don't know how I didn't know about this before.
Yeah, I'm looking at the site right now. Like, I must have missed them at New York City Comic Con last year or something, because this is bizarre. There's a ton of these books.
Yeah, like they've got The Count of Monte Cristo, Pride and Prejudice, Dracula, Jane Eyre. Like, it's all over the place. Like, they like jump across genres as to what they're adapting, and like I'm really interested to see if it's a like 1-to-1 adaptation or if they like cut down some of the content, because like The Count of Monte Cristo is huge. It would be an undertaking to adapt this in any way, let alone like sentence by sentence. So I'm like, if the Count of Monte Cristo has been adapted and like cut down a little bit, maybe that's the way that I want to like imbibe that story, as opposed to trying to read the prose book, which has been on my to-read list forever. So in terms of the Frankenstein that's coming out, though, I loved that prose book when I was in school. Like, it was assigned reading, but it was such a quick and engaging read that I'm always drawn to new adaptations of Frankenstein. So I'm probably going to start with this one once I start digging into what this company has done.
Cool. Yeah, you'll have to let us know if there's anything else worth reading there. Because I've always wanted to read Count of Monte Cristo, but it's a big old book.
Yeah, it's a break.
Yeah. What about you, Nick? What are you excited for this week?
Well, I mean, first off, please let me know when they adapt The Sound and the Fury, because if there's an opportunity that I'll actually understand that work at some point, I'm always I'm up for that. I'm because that would prove that maybe someone else actually understood it at some point.
Yeah.
As for what I'm looking forward to, I think Mike and I are always engaged in this game of chicken when it comes to what book we're picking for this week, because like so like it's turned into like it started as checkers and now it's chess, because I was so certain he was going to pick Lazarus Risen 5. We even talked about Lazarus Risen 5 a few days ago. I was like, all right, I need to prepare for this, and then he doesn't pick it this week, so I have I will just do both very briefly then, because obviously I already did this.
Briefly.
Yep. So Lazarus Risen 5 is coming out. Really, really, really excited for this book. Not super pumped about the $7.99 price tag attached. I know this is a little bit of a hot take, but I'll say it. Like, I don't need all the extra stuff. I'm sure someone else loves having the story in the back and the RPG supplement in the back. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy to see that they're putting out more content for their RPG. That's fantastic. I don't need all that stuff. Take the stuff out, put it in the trade, lower the price of the issue down to maybe something like $6, and we'll talk. It's also really weird because when you consider how big these issues are, and you consider how infrequently they're coming out, they're almost on a trade schedule, but they're not trades. You know what I mean? Like, it's...
Well, they intentionally moved to a quarterly schedule.
Yeah, I'm saying that was a mistake. Right. I understand. It was a bad idea. I guess what I'm saying is I don't understand why they wouldn't just even switch to trades, because at this point, why not just go full trade? I think people just get nervous about, if our book is only coming out, in trades, maybe it doesn't have that public visibility factor that single issues sort of remind people of. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, very excited.
There's a lot of...
Yeah.
That's a whole discussion.
I won't fall down that rabbit hole. I will say we're going to have Lazarus paying a visit to the Moray family, which if you are current with Lazarus, that is a very exciting thing. Very exciting thing. Should be super good. Also, I want to say we've got Colonel Weird Cosmagog #1 coming out. This, of course, is part of the Black Hammer series from Jeff Lemire. Very excited for this book. I will say this, it's been over a year since we've had a quote-unquote main series entry for Black Hammer. I keep wanting to say Black Magic. That's Greg Rucka. Nick, you already talked about a Greg Rucka book. You can't bring up another immediately. All of these side issue things, I thought they were great. Most of them are really solid books, but I liked them functioning as a supplement to the main book. And so just kind of having all of these side stories rolling out one after another, I miss having that driving force of the main book.
Yeah, I agree.
That said, Tyler Crook, absolutely fantastic artist. Jeff Lemire, totally is always working with some of the best names and best artists out there that exist. And Tyler Crook, for me, is his work on Hero County, his work on BPRD, absolutely fantastic. So at the very least, I'm on a visual, aesthetically speaking, I'm super pumped for this book.
Yeah. Well, for me this week, I was gonna pick Colonel Weird Cosmagog, actually, Nick. And
oh my god! Don't play with me on this. No.
So here's the thing: I haven't been keeping up on Lazarus because I'm the book comes out so infrequently. There's so much story. I'm just gonna read all of Lazarus Risen after 5 comes out and just be like, okay, I'm caught up. This is like Once and Future. I've been trying to read that book month to month. I'm just there's so much Arthurian bullshit in this book that I can't read it month to month. I have to read it when it comes out. Same with the East of West. There are a lot of books that come out like this that I'm just
how far back are you on Lazarus though?
I read Lazarus Risen #1 and 2. That was it.
You should at least read the first arc of Fractured. So 1 through 3 of Fractured are the first arc. 4 is a standalone issue. This next one coming out begins the second arc of Fractured. So you could you should at least read the first arc of Fractured.
Sure. Well, either way. I mean, what I'm trying to say is sometimes I get it. Some of these books are really dense, and I don't know why they come out as actual single issues. They should just come out as trades. East of West should have been a series of graphic novels, not a fucking ongoing series.
That is the hardest book to read in single issues.
Exactly.
Hands down.
Exactly. So, anyways,
let's just open that. Yeah, we're just opening up all of these Pandoras.
Someone better be taking notes on there on future episodes that they want to hear us, rant about. So the book that I want to talk about really quick for this week that I'm excited for is Tartarus #6. This is by Johnny Christmas with a guest artist for this arc, Andrew Cronky. Previously in this series, the art was done by someone else whose name I didn't write down, but it was really unique. It reminded me a lot of almost like Frank Quietly, but even more absurd and insane. And this art looks, for Andrew Kroenke, I think we've seen him on other books, looks a little bit more traditional, like Western comics. But either way, it looks like he's going to be a guest artist for this current arc. Looks like we're going to see a big old fight between Circa and Hisa. Unless you're reading this book, none of that really matters. Like, Tartarus is a book that I can't explain to you. Tartarus is such a complicated series that I don't think I could do it justice by telling you and trying to catch you up. So all I want to say is that I'm excited for issue number 6. I don't know. The only other thing I'll say is, this book is really, really complex, but it's really compelling. There's a lot of wild stuff. It kind of reminds me of Michael Morisi's Roche Limit series that he did with the 3 independent miniseries, where there's a lot of sci-fi crazy shit going on, and you have to be paying attention to really get it. And I think that's where Tartarus is. And I think Johnny Christmas is doing a great job. I really enjoyed the first arc, reading it all in one go. And I think that's probably going to be similar for this upcoming arc. So I'll probably sit down and read this when it comes out, but I'll likely just wait for the rest of the arc to finish. Real quick, I want to shout out Giga number 1, actually coming out this week. Tia mentioned it on an episode a few weeks back. I'm very, very excited for number 1, and I think a lot of people on the internet are also excited about this. It's coming from Volt Comics. And the last book I'll mention is Hot Valley Days and Cocaine Nights. Number 1, I actually have no interest in this book. I just can't believe that a book is called Hot Valley Days and Cocaine Nights. And you have to say it like that. It's legally mandated. Anyways, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about our Goodreads book of the month for the month of October, and which was a pretty fun little book called Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1. So we'll be back in just a second. For our show this week, we are talking about our Goodreads book of the month, Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1, as voted on by our wonderful friends and family over at the Goodreads group on Goodreads.com. So if you're not already a member, you should go over there and join it. This is written by James Tynion IV, with art by Werther Dell'Edera, colors by Miquel Muerto, and letters by Andworld Design. This is published by Boom Studios. I want to say, yeah, what a book. Thank you for everyone who voted on this and the person who nominated this. I didn't actually pull that up, but this was an interesting read. I want to say one thing before we get started. Thanks to the folks listening on Discord. Thanks, Danny. You're cool. Thanks for hanging out. We're recording this episode and we're having people listen live. So if you want to do that in the future, make sure to join the Discord at ircbpodcast.com/Discord. But let's get into this. Let's talk about the Goodreads book of the month. Kait, what did you think of this book? What did you think of Something is Killing the Children?
I don't think that you mentioned this is going to be full spoilers, so I'm just going to shuffle in here and remind you about that.
It's only been 5 years on the show, and I forget every single time. Thank you. And
this is all available on Hoopla too. So if you haven't read this yet and want to pause for a little while and go read that, and then come back, that's available. I really liked this book. I think we heard really good things about this when it first started. So Brian and I collected the first 5 issues in print. So even though this is all available on Hoopla and also as a volume, I finally read our print single issues that have been sitting around for a while now. And this, I really enjoyed this. I am kind of glad that I waited to read it until it was spooky fall time. I feel like adding something to my, the physical experience of reading comics really helps me get into the atmosphere of the comic. And just I mean, it was daytime and I wasn't sometimes I like to drink a certain kind of tea or something to complement the book, and I wasn't really drinking anything special, but just it being chilly and the leaves falling outside the window and everything, it really contributed to the something hinky's going on here.
So you got really atmospheric with your read.
Yeah. And I liked it. I mean, it is a horror book, and I don't really take to really bloody comics very, very quickly or very easily, but this one, I didn't feel like the blood was like gratuitous in it. There is like a monster that kills children in it, so like it is a spoiler as a title.
I mean, the
It's
title
not a
is a
metaphor.
spoiler.
Yeah. So there are like bodies and blood and gore and violence and everything, but it's definitely like a like the monster is the bad guy.
Mhm.
We're going to take the monster out. Like there isn't anything that I felt like crossed a line in terms of bloodiness. So
Sure.
I think that I'm probably going to continue with the single issues that will make up volume 2 are on Hoopla, so I think I'm going to continue the series that way probably in the next week or so, because there is a whole lot of world building in this, and there's enough of it to really make me intrigued in volume 1, but none of it is explained. So
yeah. Well, Nancy from the Goodreads group said the world building is intriguing as you can't help but wonder at Erica. There's another character in the book's past and her intentions. There are hints that she belongs to a society of monster killers, which like that's a whole other piece of this, right? So we meet our main character, the little boy, James, and then we also end up meeting this character Erica as their stories eventually cross paths, and she's got a whole ordeal down where she's just killing things with machetes, and she's getting phone calls from someone we don't know who it is, and she's talking to a little like fluffy squid that turns out to be something else. Like this book is all over the place with questions and like things that you just kind of had to roll with in order to get to the main plot of the story of there's a monster and we need to kill it. You know, Nick, what did you think of this book?
Well, I mean, it was an octopus. It wasn't a squid. So I guess we know. I guess we know who really read the book.
Yeah.
it was a stuffed animal. I mean,
it was a stuffed animal. It doesn't matter.
It was a shape.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed this book. I didn't think it was amazing. I think part of the issue was I feel like it was getting so much press and so much attention, and
oh yeah,
and just sort of on the periphery of all the comic book news I sometimes wade through on Twitter. Like this was showing up a lot, and I think in some ways I think it had it was, by the time I sat down to read it, it was having to live up to this massive amount of praise and adulation that I'd been seeing, which that's always tough to do. Yeah, it's super violent, and it's not to say that I don't relish reading super violent books, but obviously I do read other books that tend to be have graphic depictions of violence in them.
Weren't you mentioning Rye earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I was going to, absolutely. I'm not going to be hypocritical when I say, I don't read books like this, or I don't, other books that I enjoy contain similar elements, but it is a little bit more disturbing in the sense that it's just very visceral, violent acts towards, kids, youths.
Sure.
Which I think makes it, a little bit more disturbing. I think, somewhat in like, media, there's kind of like a non-spoken rule that like maybe, if anyone's going to get hurt, like let it be the adults, don't let it be the animals, and don't let it be the children. You know what I mean?
Right,
like
right.
There's sort of that unspoken trope that if anyone's going to be hurt, like they need to be, an adult. So definitely that's kind of rough, because there's some real, people are getting like bisected, torn in half and whatnot, which is kind of hard to get through, I think, at some points. I think tonally the book, starting with this like terrifying open panel of like somebody, being like truth or dare, and the way that they angle that opening panel, it's like of someone like basically like leaning over the top of the reader. And, there's nothing more terrifying than people like violating my personal space. So like right away, I was like, oh no, what is this book? Like, please.
The horror is claustrophobia.
Maintain 6 feet, please. More would be better. 6 feet, more like 6 meters, please.
Yeah.
So yeah, right out of the gate, pretty scary. Another thing I thought that was kind of interesting, and just sort of, it's kind of a tangent, but it's sort of interesting to see this in books. when you see Erica and she's got her flip phone and she's sort of navigating with that first call from her boss, whomever, whatever. It's interesting because it started to make me think about how we use technology as its own sort of unspoken signifier, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, like, when you look at her using the cell phone, I saw that and went, oh, a flip phone, interesting, right? Like, is this a period piece? And we're looking at a comic taking place in maybe 2002, 2001? Or is this a signifier that this is someone who doesn't care about technology, who doesn't keep up on those things, and has a flip phone? Or is this someone who, like, you know, doesn't carry around a nice phone because they're in the business of, you know, destroying monsters, and when you're in that business, you want a Nokia that you can drop down 7 flights of stairs. Anyway, I just found that really interesting. Like, that was the small tangent my brain took when I saw that, and whether or not Tynion was trying to evoke any of those things, who knows? But again, death of the author, interpretation is whatever you make of it. I found that interesting, and probably just me.
Yeah, so I mean, this book was not what I expected it to be. I for some reason expected it to be a little bit more actiony. Which is not bad. Like, I thought that the creep factor of this book was interesting. I have been watching a lot of classic horror films that have, like, just a single path, right? Like, I watched The Fly the other day, and the story in that movie is very single path. There's no twists. There's no nothing. It is just, this man becomes one with the fly. The end, right? So, you know, watching this, it's like this too has a very straightforward path. There is a monster, we must kill it. And I don't think that that's bad. I think that actually makes for a really good horror story. And I'm not someone that is a huge fan of horror, but as I watch and consume more over my 32 years of life, like, you start to understand kind of how a lot of these things work. And I think if you take this book as a classic horror story and then add some comic book elements to it, you know, like the scene inside the octopus, seeing the angel or something, I don't know what the fuck that is, and then, like, you know, kids can only see this monster, kind of plays off of this idea that of, you know, like, there are plenty of stories where kids are the only people that can see villains in some ways, and I think that whole thing adds to a layer of, like, fear. Like, It, I think, is one of those examples, right? Like, you have, like, a mind that is able to understand the absurd and the inane, and therefore you can understand it. Pippi Longstocking is another one. It's the one with the weird, crazy, like, shitty clown or something that's someone's imaginary best friend. You guys know what I'm talking about? This is a weird 80s movie reference that I don't think anybody got.
No, I don't know that one. No.
So, yeah, I like that portion of this book. Like, this is a thing that only affects kids because they're the only ones that can see it and understand it, and that they have the true fear of it. Whereas when you're an adult, you go, oh, something moving in the shadow. Oh, that's just a cat. Oh, that's just my coat got caught on some errant breeze. You know, like, you can rationalize a lot of this stuff. But because children have minds with more imagination, I think that trope really works for this book. Erica's mystery was something that I was just like, all right, we've added enough layers, Tynion, can we move on? But I didn't dislike it. I wanted to know more about this thing, and I see why everyone wanted to buy these masks that she's wearing, like the COVID masks, with the teeth on it and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, the only thing that I did like the kind of twist on the older brother who was looking for his sister. He gets hit in the head with some, like, piece of gold or something, like the slaughterhouse gold or something, and then he can see the monster because for some reason there's a whole bunch of lore here that gets dumped on us in the final chapter of the volume. All that stuff worked for me. I probably will only keep reading this in trade if I decide to. Like, maybe I'll read it next Halloween. Otherwise, I don't have a lot of inclination to read this. I thought the story overall was okay. Like, it's not, to me, I don't understand the hype. That's usually what happens with a lot of these books, but I thought it's a pretty good looking book. The art was a little bit wild for me in some places, but everything looked like it was layered with a, like, invisible denim on top of it. That's not really for me. But yeah, interesting book. That's my takeaway.
I think to Tynion's credit, I sort of get what you were saying with the whole confusion over the gold thing, and I think that actually plays all the way back to issue 1, because you eventually see her pull the hair from over her, I think it's her left eye, and you see that she's got this weird yellow diamond on the side of her head, and I have to believe that that's where she was poked with that same gold thing, with the idea being that if you gouge someone in the side of their head with this thing, that they can then see these creatures if they're adults.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 97 when she's hassling with
the brother,
the big jock guy,
older brother guy.
She's got a piece of gold in her head. Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
I guess I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I mean, if you go all the way back, you can see that she's got some sort of marking on her head as well. So yeah, it's I guess I would say for me it's definitely, this is one of those volume ones that feels like it is very much building a foundation. And it's such a catch-22 thing, right? Because if you don't build a tight foundation upon which to continue your series, how well is that going to work for you? But in the same vein, you have people who complain and go, oh, this whole book is just, basically putting all of the pieces in place, and it doesn't really have a life of its own outside of just setting up a foundation. It doesn't, and it's such a tough line to tread in terms of being engaging, but also setting things up in a way that isn't overwhelming, because there are quite a few moving pieces in this book, and a decent amount of characters to follow. So that is a little bit, it's tough. I understand kind of the difficulty in doing that. And it sort of almost even has kind of a Twin Peaks vibe of this idea that you have this weird, kind of quirky, sort of outside of the conventional law. You've got this outsider coming in to sort of set things straight, and they're investigating, the murders of these youths. And so I'm not saying Twin Peaks has a, ownership over that specific subgenre of work.
Sure.
But you can definitely see some sort of a similarity there as well.
Yeah.
Also, I do find it very weird that the police are kind of okay or largely apathetic to the idea that she's presenting them with false identification. That's weird, but it happens. And they're like, yeah, this is a paper ID. That's kind of funny. And she's like, yeah, it is.
Well, but it all gets sorted out when her boss or whatever calls. I mean, yeah, it's kind of something we just have to roll with, right? There's definitely a bigger story. There's an Illuminati or something involved. Something bizarre. Kate, was there anything else that stood out to you with this book that you liked or didn't like?
I mean, I feel like we should talk about the art at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I complained about it, so go ahead.
So Danny has mentioned the colors, and I really enjoyed the tone of the colors in the book. I think that they're a really good selection that matched the tone of the story. I definitely anything that any bright colors I think would have really stood out. And I've seen like some horror colored brightly before, but it's got to really be you've got to dedicate yourself to it. So I think that the choice that they made here was really good. And I feel like we need to talk about Erica's eyes.
They're constantly open.
Yeah, they're giant. I guess when she said to Tommy, the guy that came and tried to do justice for the dead children and ended up just fucking everything up. Sorry, messing everything up.
Oh yeah, we don't swear on this.
Don't swear on this show.
She mentioned that she's got to do something that's kind of painful so he can see the monsters, and that's when she stabbed him in the temple with the gold pen thing. Because of the way that her eyes look, I thought that she was going to pluck his eyes out and replace them with a different set of eyes or something, or
oh my god,
put monster blood in his eyes and it would change the way that they look, because her eyes are gigantic, and then
like it's Battle Angel Alita or something.
yeah,
over
like
here.
the irises are like golden, and then the rest of her eyes are like they're not even off white; they're like kind of yellow.
Yeah.
And then of course
Yeah.
all around her eyes it's very dark. So I was thinking that she was going to like make this guy not, I don't want to say like blind for a minute or something, but man, I was really expecting him to get real messed up.
I thought she was going to gouge out his eye, and to be honest, at the beginning of the book, when they kept covering her one eye with hair, I was like, I'm waiting for it, but we are going to find out that she is either missing that other eye, or like that part of her face is like super disfigured or something. So I was totally shocked when they pulled the hair back and there was another eye, and I was like, okay, like bait and switch. I totally thought we were going to have like an eye patch or a missing eye or something, especially, you know, being someone who fights and hunts monsters. I was like, you know, single missing eye is cool. Eye patches are cool.
Yeah. There is a theme. There is a theme about eyes in this book, because the first time that we see Erica, she's with this kid who's missing an eye and like most of their limbs. And then we've got the octopus creature, stuffed animal that is missing an eye, and then her eye is covered. And then there is also like a side character that Tommy is talking to at some point, and one of her eyes is covered. So there's just like a whole thing about eyes.
Right. And then also when you see the creepy board meeting, the cutaway to the creepy board meeting where everyone has their stuffed animals on the table, which is probably the one panel of this book where I'm like, this is the thing that might keep me reading more. Like that single shot. I was like, what is going on here? What is this about? This is what I want to know more about. Everybody in that picture has a weird sparkling glimmer coming from their eyes, which you would have to believe they all look to be adults. Probably the eye thing is the fact that they've all also, you know, had somebody, you know, stab a uniball pen into the side of their temple too.
Or something, yeah.
So, yeah. Also, the giraffe on the table kind of made me think of Blade Runner with the origami, but that was probably just me being like, oh, interesting. Small animals on tables somehow equals Blade Runner, whatever.
Well, there's this thing where they've all got like this dragon symbol. Right, like that's the thing that was on the guy's hand and in the guy's eye and between all the chapter markers. I read it in collections, so like between each chapter there was like a page that had like this dragon symbol, and each of them have their own bears or tricks. I think they all have their own like little non-demons that are demons or something. I don't know. There's more, obviously a lot more to this world.
There was also a woman that she talked to getting off the bus, and this woman's face was really sunken and her eyes looked too big, and there was like a tattoo on her cheek or something. And because of all of the other little pieces of world building dropped throughout this book, I'm wondering if that woman is like the glory of this Buffy story, basically. Like she's actually someone else that's just like has a face, a mask of a different face on.
I mean, maybe. It looks like she just has like sunken cheekbones or something.
Yeah, she could just be an elderly woman, but she could also be a monster with a flesh suit on.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, some other folks in the Goodreads group compared this to a Buffy story, like an R-rated Buffy story. I think Nancy mentioned that, and then Whitney said, you know, I definitely felt the R-rated Buffy vibes. Erica is a Buffy who is in her 30s and so very tired of the death. She has the black eye circles to prove it. Her job is brutal, and she has to look at dead children every day. Her bosses really seem like the annoying Watchers Council. Like, I can totally see that, like, point. As like a very serious like Buffy who travels the coasts or travels the country to try to save children instead of killing vampires. Like that makes sense. But I don't know. There's definitely like some sort of weird monster Illuminati going on, which I kind of took in as to be like maybe they accidentally set these monsters out in the world and now they're trying to fix it. Maybe, I don't know. That's just my pet theory. Who knows? When I read this next volume next year, I'll report back to you guys.
There was a couple of little things that I wanted to point out too. Just so basically in that same scene, when Erica is getting off the bus, there's this missing children board that's just covered in posters of missing children at the bus stop. And I thought that was a really great way to show really quickly how many children are missing without actually like taking us out of the main character's story.
Mm-hmm.
And then also one of the covers is possibly one of my favorite covers ever. I think it was the cover of issue number 5, and Erica's like got a weapon raised above her head. She's jumping down from the top right corner of the cover, and then there's just like a little bit of the monster in the bottom left corner, and it's just so perfectly balanced. And like the use of like quote unquote white space in the background is just, it's so well done. Like it draws your eyes to like both subjects, and I don't know, just graphic design. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and that kind of brings us to another point. I think Kate, you were talking about earlier, is like, you know, Werther Dell'Edra's like art is pretty good. I mean, I there was like this texturizing of the art that maybe wasn't for me in some places. Like it felt like it was very just like everything had a ton of lines and texture and dots and all this other stuff. But on the whole, though, like the book's very well done. I think like the monsters are terrifying, and the very action packed scenes feel like you feel them. You understand like the pain and the like thumping of legs and things like that. And it's quite a bit. It's a lot. But I don't know, like it was okay in some pages. Like I think there's some stuff that I was kind of just like, all right, we're just doing like some weird stylized thing. Like there's a big conversation between, what's his name, Tommy and his mom, and I'm just like faces and faces and faces, and I was just like, this could have been done a little bit faster. I don't know.
Oh my god, I think I counted that was 25 panels.
But I mean, we don't punish other books for that, so I don't want to say that the number of panels was bad. I just like, I don't know, that scene just felt like a lot, and the art was just, ugh.
It didn't.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm glad you brought this up, because it means I don't have to be the one who brings this up, or at least I don't have to be the one to kick down the door. I'm just the one who gets to walk in after you. And this is not to say anything about Werther. Obviously, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what level of collaboration is going on here in terms of page layouts. There's nothing wrong with the majority of the page layouts in this book. They're simple. They're intuitive. There's nothing wrong with squares and rectangles. You know, not everything needs to be really unconventional. Not everything needs to be Gideon Falls. End of story.
Right.
And that's fine. That said, if you want to stick to rectangles and squares, again, I can't emphasize this enough. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't need a 25 panel page conversation. Trim up the conversation, or give me less text in each panel, or something like that, because when I hit this page in the book, my eyes completely glazed over. And then I immediately said, you know what? We're going to read this, and I'm going to see whether or not I think there was any reason to have this play out for as long as it does, and as dense as it does. And it doesn't. It doesn't. And
right.
There are about 3 or 4 other pages in this book that are guilty of the exact same thing. And maybe I'm not patient enough anymore. I don't know. Maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, there's a lot to read here. I better take this all in. Maybe I've reached a point where I just don't know. It was too much.
Yeah, I mean, some pages like that, I mean, I think you can convey the same feeling with less. I mean, like, Nick, we sat down and read some old Brian Michael Bendis comics. Like, we know that there's like what the definition of bad is in that regard. But that page is a lot. I mean, like, I'm just kind of skimming through the book right now, and like the art, like there are pages where I'm just like, shit, that looks really good, right? And there are some pages where it just felt like, I don't know, like there was like the faces feel weird, or like the layout is weird, or like I don't know. Some of it just didn't work for me in some places. I don't know. Kate, what did you think of the art?
I mean, I think that it really contributed to like the tone of the story. I guess it's really unusual, so it did take me well, I mean, I would say not even a couple of pages. Like, it's not a type of art that I'd normally be drawn to. I mean, like, I was reading the Tea Dragon Society, so
Mm-hmm.
so it's very different. But I mean, it worked so well that aside from the weird eyes, I mean, it helped me just get into the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is creepy. Like, I do think that the art does a great job of making you feel uneasy. Like, Danny made a point in the Discord, he said sometimes the layouts and the art made me feel uneasy, and I absolutely agree with that. Like, I think some of the angles, like Nick was saying at the beginning of the book, like the character standing over another one, like, that's just intimidating. Like, that just sets the book off to be like, you're going to feel a little uncertain about a lot of things in this book. So, like, I totally get that, but, like, I don't know. Some of it I was just like, I don't know. It just didn't feel right. Like, they're in the House Depot thing, and they're trying to buy stuff, and some of the facial expressions are just a little odd. Like, who gets their face that deep inside of a coat? I don't know. The naked man scene. I'm just giving to the book. Like, I really want to say, the moment, there's a moment in the book where the police officer's talking to, like, the medical examiner, and I, for some reason, just immediately cast the medical examiner as Greg Grunwald. Did anybody else do that? Did J.J. Abrams direct this book? Is that what I'm saying?
Greg Grunberg?
Greg Grunberg, that's what I meant, yeah. He's GG something. This is also a Star Wars book now. Anyways, sorry, really weird joke.
No, I got it.
But yeah,
no one else did.
Any I guess we're gonna run out of tape here pretty quick, despite my 30-minute rant in the middle of the break. Do you guys want to make any final moments or final points about this book? Do you think you'll keep reading?
I do think that I'm going to keep reading, and probably like tonight.
Okay.
Wow.
I didn't read past that because I wanted to like make sure that only volume 1 was in my head. But
yeah.
Like I said, I think that's a really perfect book for fall. I think that this did get a lot of recognition, and I have liked James Tynion's like independent work for a while. I read oh gosh, he put out one, I think it was like his very first book that was more or less independent, that wasn't part of a larger series, and I loved that one.
The Woods?
I think it was the Backstagers. Yeah, I haven't read them yet, but that's on my to-read list. But yeah, I mean, this creator is just putting out like consistently good work for me. And I think I met him at a Comic-Con, and he was a pretty nice guy.
Yeah.
So I plan to keep going with the series, with the creator. Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. What about you, Nick? What are your final thoughts on this?
I mean, between this and The Woods, high school is a tough enough time for most people, so I don't know why James Tynion seems obsessed with making these people even more miserable than they probably already are. Yeah. That said, I will probably try volume 2 when it is collected. I think waiting and seeing what the full payoff is in volume 2, like, I'm willing to say, let's give this the benefit of a doubt. Let's see kind of the payoff as we start to see the pieces move around the board. Why do I want to keep talking about chess? I don't know. Chess on the brain, whatever.
I don't know.
Art wise, I think it is sort of, again, it's like really tough to ride that line between getting an artist who's capable of really channeling the horror moments properly, but then knowing how to like turn that off and turn it down for the moments in the book that don't really require that. Because I feel like some artists that you get can do the horror part really well, but then sort of that weird horror, either aesthetic kind of like leaks into the normal day-to-day stuff of the book, and it's like, okay, what's going on? Or you get the really good person who can do the day-to-day stuff but really can't turn the horror up to 11 when the book requires it. And I think that this book does manage to walk that line well enough, and that the scary horror elements are, I don't know, they didn't like, it wasn't super like tropey in terms of like, you know, scary horror signifiers, or I find that the art style isn't like super tropey in terms of like falling into what I would consider like a conventional horror aesthetic. It's still pretty, in terms of the colors and the art style, it's like pretty bright and stylized and yet still very scary. which I do think is unique. But I am interested to see how all of this plays out. I mean, who knows after volume 2, but I am interested to see the execution with the following volume.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm pretty much in the same boat as you, Nick. Like, I'm gonna wait for the next trade to come out. I don't think this is a book I'm gonna search out unless it's really like in my face or someone asks me, "Hey, what did you think of Volume 2?" Then maybe I'll sit down and read it. Because all in all, this wasn't a hard read. It wasn't a overcomplicated read. Obviously, I missed like 2 big like red herrings in the book, or 2 big obvious pieces of lore that I shouldn't have missed. Like when Erica pulls back her hair and there's a gold thing on her head, I just didn't see that. But like overall, like, yeah, I agree with you, Nick. Like, it's a bright book that has horror elements. And there are some pages, again, that the art really works and some pages that it just doesn't. So like, I'm really in the middle on it. So I think I'll probably, again, try this when the next arc or volume gets collected, but I'm not in a hurry to read it. Though I will say I finished this volume and immediately was going to go try to buy one of those like face coverings from this because I want to be a part of the Cool Kids Club. But beyond that, yeah, it's just like, it's an interesting book. It definitely was not what I expected it to be. I didn't expect it to be so much lore, or there to be so much lore. And yeah, so we'll see if Kate, if you report back that it's really, really good, maybe I'll dig into it. But not necessarily seeking it out. Just as someone who doesn't read a lot of horror and thought it was just, pretty good, like 3.5 stars out of 5. Well, yeah, I guess thanks to everyone, for voting on this, and for all the folks on Goodreads who put this together. I want to say thank you to Phil, who nominated this, and Aaron, who seconded it. So thank you guys for putting this into the nomination, and thanks to everyone else who put up nominations for this month's poll. Get on the Goodreads right now. We're going to be putting up nominations. I think nominations are up right now for next month's book of the month, and or we're doing voting or something. I can never remember. I can never keep this stuff straight. But if you're not in the Goodreads group, you should make sure to go join that. It's a really fun time, and we do a show every other month. And if you want to listen to the odd months, or the even months, what month is this? If you want to listen to the opposite months where we don't have them on the public feed, we do also talk about the Goodreads book of the month on the Patreon, which you can join at ircbpodcast.com/Patreon. But anyways, you can follow us all on the internet. You can follow Nick at Death Star Plans. You can follow Kate at Kate Elfier, and you can follow me at Mike Rappin, and you can follow the show at IRCB Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
This show and our many subscriber-only episodes are powered by fans like you on Patreon. You can join now at patreon.com/IRCB Podcast. And if you haven't already, please rate and review our show, 5 stars, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Join us on Discord at ircbpodcast.com/Discord, and make sure to tell a friend or two about the show.
Yeah, we're going to try to do more of these live recordings, so if you're interested, make sure to be on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard. That's when we usually record. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all of our music. We can't thank them enough. Xander is a very cool guy, someone that edits the show, and, he's just a fun person to hang out with and have a conversation with. Until next time, I want to say thank you to Nick and Kate for being on this episode. Thank you to the folks on Discord, mostly just Danny, for being here listening to the live episode. And remember, comics are good, and so are you. And also, thank you for listening to the show. I didn't say that part, but thank you. And actually, since we're recording, I really want to talk about this thing really quick. There's a book coming out called Weed Magic #4. And it's from Bliss on Tap Publishing. I mentioned this a little bit before we started recording. I just want to say that, Xander, don't put this in the middle of the episode. Put it, or beginning of the episode. Put it at the end. The description is: rescuing a talking chimpanzee from an animal testing facility? Check. Smoking out Jesus? Check. Defeating a 420-foot woman terrorizing Hollywood? Check. What adventures await in Weed Magic #4? It's time for a road trip to Las Vegas. I don't know why this book exists. All I know is that it's 28 pages and it costs $4.20.
I was going to say, please God, please, if the price is not $4.20,
right.
What are you even doing at that point?
Man, the cover is amazing. I'm posting this in Discord. It's beautiful. Anyways, okay, that's all I want to do for that. Let's do the show. Xander, put that at the end.
Oh,
I can't do
God.
any more of these cold opens. They're killing me.
That is obviously clearly a Fear and Loathing and Loss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Oh.
I've got music. Where's the music
Sorry,
coming from?
What?
Sorry.
I was like,
Zencaster has this thing where you could play like like little fills and stuff. Like, listen to this.
I was like, wow, he's really kicked the intro up a notch. This is like,
Yeah, we're pulling Xander out of the editing process, and instead it's just going to be me just using like fills like. Danny, I don't know if you can hear those fills and stuff, but it's.
I feel like I feel like you're now that morning radio show on Parks and Rec.
Dude, all I want to do is be a radio show announcer. Like, you're listening to IRCB Radio. I'm your host, Mike Rappin, and I'm joined by the one and only fartnin' Nick White.
And then it's just 2 straight minutes of soundboard effects.
Yeah, exactly. Mike and the douche. Oh, it's dramatic piano.
I loved you.
Dramatic piano.
I loved you undercutting the piano with the drums. That was.
Yeah. All right. Let's do this thing. Now that we're good and warmed up, get ready.
Oh boy.